Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. When I stood up here in opening statements, I started by telling you that this case was really an easy case, not a complicated case, a very simple case. And as I stand up here before you now, I want to reiterate, this is not a difficult case. The question for you to answer in this case boils down to really just one question. There's only one important question in this case, one critical question that you have to answer. And that is, did Mr. Mayers, the man at the table, did he use a real gun or did he use a fake gun? Now,
there we go. That's what I said.
For those of you who have been jurors in the past, you know that as jurors, often when you sit in these cases, you have to answer a whole host of questions. You need to answer, was the defendant, was Mr. Mayers, was he even there that night? Was a gun, did he actually have a gun? Was the gun loaded? Did he actually fire the gun? You know, there could be a bunch of different questions that you have to answer. In this case, all those questions are agreed to. And it only comes down to that one question. Was it a real gun or was it a fake gun? Nothing else is in dispute. Now, I'm sure that Mr. Tacopina, when he comes up here, he's going to stand up here, he's going to talk about Mr. Efron a lot. And he's going to talk to you about how did Mr. Efron earn his income, who's Mr. Efron's girlfriend, did Mr. Efron tell people he was a millionaire, or what kind of lifestyle did Mr. Efron lead people to believe he had on Instagram? None of that matters. None of that matters. None of that relates to the singular question that on November 6, 2021 in Hollywood, did the defendant have a real gun? Did he have a fake gun? Now, you're not going to hear me, and you haven't heard Mr. Lewin or I throughout this case tell you that after this crime happened, that Mr. Efron did not think to himself, I want to be compensated for what happened to me. And we are not going to tell you that Mr. Efron, after this crime, this horrible crime happened, that his primary motivation wasn't, man, I really need to go to the police and make sure that whoever did this was held accountable. That's not what Mr. Efron was thinking. Mr. Efron was absolutely focused on himself. We agree to that. We talked to you about that all the way back in jury selection. We told you at the time, Mr. Efron filed a lawsuit. Mr. Efron wants money because of what happened. Okay? That hasn't been hidden from you. We actually stood here and stipulated to that with the defense, that there was a lawsuit, what the causes of actions were. We agree to all that. None of that's in dispute. It's very important that you understand your role in this case, and specifically what your role in this case is not about. You are never going to be asked to decide how much money should Mr. Efron get for what happened to him that night. Does Mr. Mayers, does he owe Mr. Efron $1, no dollars, a gazillion dollars? You'll never be asked to answer that question. Your role is not to consider that, not to consider that question. The only question that you are here to answer is, that night in Hollywood, did Mr. Mayers have a real gun or a fake gun? Was the gun that Mr. Mayers pulled out of his pants, pointed at Mr. Efron, a real gun or a fake gun?
No.
Was the gun that Mr. Mayers turned around and pointed at Mr. Efron and fired twice at that corner of Selma and Vista Del Mar, was it a real gun or a fake gun? I want to start out, too, with where I started in opening statements, with the video.
Here we go.
My apologies, the audio here is not good video. My apologies, the audio here is not in this video. But that's what we're talking about. That moment in time, when you see the gun on that video. The answer to that question that I've now posed to you several times is obvious. It's obvious. That man decided, for whatever reason, that he was going to settle his dispute with Mr. Efron that night with a gun. That he was going to do that in the middle of Hollywood. And that he was going to fire his gun not once, but twice. That man made the decision to reach out to Mr. Efron to provoke this confrontation. He made the decision to bring two other people with him, Ills and Twelvey. Mr. Efron's outnumbered 3-1. But still, he made the decision to bring a loaded, concealed gun with him to that confrontation. Those were his decisions. Those decisions had consequences, and you know the results of those decisions. And that is what we are asking you to hold him accountable for in this case. We know the consequences of his decisions really beyond a doubt. The video here is clear. The defense put up Twelvey, Mr. Phillips, to narrate the video for you. And I guess the question you have to ask after listening to Twelvey's is, are you going to listen to Twelvey, the man who relies on the defendant for his livelihood, for his income, really for his entire career? Are you going to rely on him, or are you going to rely on your own lying
It's embarrassing.
eyes? Because what he described on the video did not happen. What did the video show? Well, it showed the defendant confronting Mr. Efron. It showed the defendant executing his plan to immediately get in Mr. Efron's face. Immediately engage in a physical confrontation. It shows Mr. Efron did not have a weapon. And honestly, it shows that Mr. Efron was really unprepared for what he was walking into. Mr. Efron went there to talk. He went there to argue. He went there that night to resolve his differences, not to engage in a physical fight. But he's immediately confronted with a physical confrontation. So how does he respond? Again, simple questions. This is just a hypothetical, but if he's asked, what's the weather like that night? His answer is going to start out with something like, I couldn't tell. Mr. Efron is such a huge man. He's so muscular. When he approached me, he blotted out the sky. I couldn't tell you what it was because he's such a large individual. Okay? He repeatedly puts that fact in front of you. He wants you to focus on Mr. Efron's size, how big he is, how muscular he is. How honestly, it sounded like this was the first time that Twelvey had seen Mr. Efron outside of the gym. He constantly repeated how much Mr. Efron was in the gym, how big he was. At that moment, when Mr. Efron is approaching the defendant, he doesn't know what's about to happen. We all know because we see it on the video. But at that moment, he did not know. He did not know the defendant had a gun. So Mr. Efron, this huge, hulking man, he's confronted outside the parking garage, and how does he respond? He responds by doing absolutely nothing. He's approached by the defendant, and what does he do? He reaches forward with his left hand Now this man's coming right up in his face. He reaches out to maintain the distance. 12E wants you to believe Mr. Efron's there to fight. He's there to start it. So when he reaches out with his left hand, what does that leave free? His right hand, his dominant hand. That muscular right hook. Does he throw a punch?
Didn't he say he was left-handed?
At the defendant? No. He honestly does nothing. He reaches out with his hand and the defendant immediately gets in his face. He's actually propelled backwards. Why doesn't he punch the defendant? Why doesn't he fight him? He's there to fight him, right? That's what 12E wants you to believe. He's there to fight the defendant. Why doesn't he? Well, he told you. He knows. If I fight this man, it's all over. Not just his relationship with the defendant. He knows they're not going to recover from that. If I punch him in the face, we're done. Our friendship is over. But not just that. My livelihood, my life is over. He's thinking in that moment, we've had problems in the past, we've talked it out. We have problems now, we can talk it out. Okay? That's his mindset. He doesn't know the defendant's mindset, though. And he has no idea how bad it's gotten for the defendant. Because a relationship takes two people. And Mr. Efron, he can only give you his perspective. Apparently, though, it's gotten very bad for the defendant. Beyond repair. That is, Mr. Efron doesn't know that. He doesn't know how bad it's gotten until the next split second when that gun comes out. And you have to understand, in the instant that gun comes out, it has to be immediately clear to Mr. Efron, oh my God. It is so much worse than I thought it was. This man, my friend, a person I've known 15 years, is pulling a gun on me. This guy hates me. And this is not going to end well for me. It's all over. That's what he's confronted with in the split second that gun comes out and is pointed at him. My career's over, my livelihood, it's all done. Now, I'm going to go through multiple people's perspective. I am not going to hold back, okay? When I talk about the defense witnesses, I want to be very clear. What they got on the stand and told you were lies. They repeatedly lied when asked about a whole variety of topics we'll get into. But there was one thing that not even they could lie or deny. And that is, it had to have been obvious to you before you even walked into this court on this case. The defendant, and certainly his significant other, are powerful individuals within the entertainment industry. Even their own witnesses, even 12E, even ASAP Lou had to acknowledge that too. And they certainly have enough power to cancel small players like Mr. Efron or 12E or Lou if that's what they want to do. And that right there, in that millisecond the gun is pulled out, that's what Mr. Efron is faced with. So how does he respond to that? That's a lot to take in a very short amount of time. You cannot put yourself in his shoes and say, what would I do? You cannot possibly capture all the emotion, all the history, everything that's going on in his head. And he probably doesn't respond the way that you would. You probably would not walk after the person who just pulled a gun on you and unload on them verbally with your grievances. But he's angry. He's upset. He's confronted with his life changing, and he knows it's over. And even though the defendant pulled a gun on him, he's not really thinking about the gun. So he follows, and he tells the defendant how he has failed the other members of their collective. And he uses Ills and he uses 12E as examples along the way. So we get to the next location, the parking lot, Vista Del Mar in Selma. And when we get to that corner, the defense, certainly 12E, want you to believe that as they arrived there, Mr. Efron immediately started attacking Ills. I'll go through the video. Honestly, we will slow it down and I'll show you where everyone is at that moment when the defendant turns around with the gun. But you know, you've watched the video. I honestly wondered to myself if I even had to address, was Mr. Efron attacking Ills at that moment? There's daylight between them, clear space. But this is where the defense is going to double down on the idea that you cannot believe what you see with your own eyes. Because when you watch the video, you can see space between Ills, you can see space between Mr. Efron. 12E could not acknowledge that on the stand. That's not why he was here. He was here to say that Mr. Efron was attacking Ills. And I'm sure, as you listen to his testimony, when he first started testifying, you had to think, this sounds like something that's been practiced.
What?
This sounds like a man who's repeating pre-programmed answers to it. It came off very robotic.
No.
I don't have to tell you he was coached into certain answers, because you saw it for your own eyes in court. If you didn't see it, you heard it. When 12E's asked a question, what is awe? That's kind of a mundane, really seemingly insignificant question. What does the defendant do? He screams out, don't answer that. Don't say. He's literally coaching him in court in front of you. And what's 12E's response? My brother's company? Man, I don't know. I can't say. So do you expect him to come into court and tell you the truth about exactly what happened on that street corner? That video does not show Mr. Efron attacking Ills.
Definitely desperation.
Really is why, when we get to the jury instructions, the instructions on defense of others are not going to apply in this case. Because what the video shows is that when they got to that street corner, the defendant thought, I've had enough. And he decided to pull his gun, and he decided to start firing at Mr. Efron. The video clearly shows, before Mr. Efron is anywhere near Ills, the defendant is already pulling the gun out, turning around, putting his arm forward. When exactly in that sequence he fired, hard to say. The sound doesn't necessarily match up perfectly with the audio. These are from two different systems. The sound is farther away than the video, but they're close enough that you can tell that in those seconds, the defendant starts firing. How does Mr. Efron react? He reacts by grabbing Ills and using him as a human shield. Would be a natural response when you're faced with someone firing a gun at you. How does the defense try to twist that though and reframe it? They try to tell you that's actually, Mr. Efron attacking Ills, because it's a tough case for them. Because it's all on video, you get to see it for yourself. This would have been a lot easier if there was no video and all they had to do was poke holes in Mr. Efron, but there's video. So they're trying to get you to believe that what you see on the video is not really what you see. Apparently, the defense also thinks that it's a problem that the defendant is actually firing shots at Mr. Efron. A problem for their defense of, apparent defense of skills, because they say actually what he was doing was firing warning shots. Warning shots. We thought it was a prop gun. There's no such thing as a warning shot from a prop gun. So that takes me to the next, really most absurd part of the defense in this case, which is that not only was this a prop gun, but Mr. Efron knew it was a prop gun. They want you to believe Mr. Efron knew that this gun was a prop gun. But at the same time, they also want you to believe, need you to believe, that he pulled the gun in order to intimidate Mr. Efron with the gun that Mr. Efron already knows is a prop gun. It is absolutely absurd. Let's start with the first premise that they want you to believe there, that the defendant is carrying a prop gun in the first place.
All right, here we go. Talk about it.
The testimony through Lou, what the defense wants you to believe is the defendant, he's been stabbed. Not only was he stabbed in this nightclub, 12 was stabbed at the same time. That's a violent thing to have happen to you. Not only that, but he has crazy people breaking into his house. Crazy people stalking him. Also breaking into his house. And when he's faced with that real violence, being stabbed with a real knife, having real people in his house that he doesn't know, what is his rational response to that? Let's carry a fake gun. Let's talk about Lou for a second. This ASAP Lou. ASAP Lou is a very valuable friend to have. ASAP Lou tells you that the defendant singled him out in a crowd because the defendant liked his energy. And little did the defendant know that he was basically recruiting the Swiss Army knife of best friends. Okay? ASAP Lou, not just your personal assistant, but he turns into your tour manager. You need someone to be at your house while the police are searching it on a moment's notice, you got Lou. He's there. But, by the way, let's be clear, Lou, he's totally impartial. He's not financially reliant on the defendant, because Lou also has his own DJing business and his own clothing brand, which apparently have nothing to do with his good friend, the famous musician who is also an ambassador to multiple clothing designers. Lou must have done that all on his own. On top of that, Lou, I said he's the Swiss Army knife. One of his functions, he's also the defendant's security consultant. And Lou told you that he sat down with some unnamed, unidentified security expert that did not testify, whose name he couldn't tell you, could give you no information about. And after the real security issues that the defendant was having, being cut with a real knife, he decided the best way that he could protect himself, that Rocky could protect himself, is with a fake gun. So that the next time someone approaches him with a real knife, he can pull out his fake gun. That's going to go one of two ways. That assailant might say, I didn't know you had a gun, and leave. Or they might attack you with their real knife or their real gun, and your fake gun is completely useless. You have no way of actually defending yourself. And if you're faced with real threats, clearly you want to have something that you can really defend yourself with, not some prop. That security advice, that is not just illogical, it's absurd. okay? And the reason why it's absurd and makes no sense is because it's not real advice. That advice was not given to the defendant, okay? Lou made that up for this case, for his testimony in this trial. It did not happen. But wait, because it gets even more absurd. All right? It's even more absurd because they're saying that Mr. Efron knew. He knew that that gun was fake when the defendant pulled it on him.
Now,
So any even remote possible deterrent effect that that fake gun would have on anyone goes completely out the window when we're talking about Mr. Efron. Because Mr. Efron knows it's fake. I mean, with the defense logic, the defendant could have popped a balloon and it would have had the exact same deterrent effect on Mr. Efron as the fake gun. Did they prove to you? Did they prove to you at all that Mr. Efron knew that gun was fake? Mr. Efron denies it. He says, when I asked him about a prop gun, it took him back. What are you talking? Where does this prop gun come from? Okay? They told you he got that prop gun at a music video shoot in July of 2021. We know the shooting happens November of 2021. Between July and November, did they show you a single instance where the defendant and Mr. Efron are together? A single instance where Mr. Efron could have received that information that this was a fake gun? Does it even make sense that if the defendant's going to carry a fake gun for his security, that he's going to tell everyone around him, hey, it's a fake gun, it's a fake gun? How does that make any sense? It makes absolutely no sense because it's not true. The truth is the defendant did not have a fake gun. He had a real gun. How do we know? Well, the first scene where the defendant pulls the real gun on Mr. Efron, what does he do? How does Mr. Efron respond? How does Ills respond? You don't see the very moment that the gun is first pulled on Mr. Efron. It's not captured on the video, they're just off camera. But what do you see when they come back into the frame? Mr. Efron's backing up. Ills is between them. Ills' entire focus is on the defendant, the man with the gun. My audio. Where's Ills looking? Is he focused on Mr. Efron, the provocateur, the one who's provoking this fight, who's trying to hurt his friend Rocky? No. He's got his back to Mr. Efron. He's focused completely on the defendant. What's Mr. Efron doing? Again, they want you to believe Mr. Efron looked at the defendant and said, put that fake-ass gun away. He never said that. What's he doing on the video? He's backing up. There's no video of the second that gun is pulled on him from this scene. But there is that video from the second location. So I want to play that for you, and I'm going to slow it down for you. I will play it at 2 different speeds. You've seen this video over and over and over. You could probably, if you have any artistic skill, you could probably draw it out from memory. But I want to play it slowly. You know who the people are involved in this. What's the defendant doing? He's pulling the gun out, and you see Mr. Efron dive behind Ills. That's how Mr. Efron responds when the gun is pulled on him.
looks like they're fighting. This is bad. It looks like they're fighting. All I can remember is them fighting.
Now this is really the moment. So I'm going to slow it down even more. We're going to go to 1/4 speed, okay? You can see the defendant already moving back towards Mr. Efron. Mr. Efron is nowhere near Ills. He's lunging towards Mr. Efron, and Mr. Efron is diving out of the way. Now this video, it creates a host of problems for the defense in this case. This is the moment where the defendant is turning around towards Mr. Efron, where he's pulling that gun out, where he's pointing it at Mr. Efron. And the gun comes out before Mr. Efron is anywhere near Ills. That completely negates their defense. Negates the reason why he says he had to pull the gun in the first place, to protect Ills. Negates Twelby's testimony that Mr. Efron was punching Ills. Creates a lot of problems for them. You can see the
I only have an
space
eyewitness
for yourself between Mr. Efron and Ills. You don't need anyone to tell you that Mr. Efron is not attacking Ills. I guess the best that they could argue is that Mr. Efron was going to attack. The jury instructions on that are clear. No, you cannot have a belief that there's going to be future harm. Doesn't matter how imminent it was. Doesn't matter if Mr. Efron was actually saying, I'm going to beat Ills up.
True.
I'm coming after you, Ills. Doesn't work. Belief in future harm is not sufficient. I want to go back to this. You can see the moment where the defendant turns with the gun in his hand, where Mr. Efron is and where Ills is. The second problem that this, so other than negating the defense, right, that 12B wants you to believe Mr. Efron is beating up Ills, that video further causes problems for the defense because nobody on that video is acting like that's a fake gun. They're all reacting to a real gun. Consider it from each of their perspectives. From the defendant's perspective, Mr. Mayers. If he's holding a prop gun and Mr. Efron knows it's a prop gun, that's what they're telling him, right? Why does he have to run towards Mr. Efron? Why does he have to move at all? Why does he have to lunge towards him? When Mr. Efron runs around Ills, why does he have to try to duck and dodge side by side to try to get a line of sight around Ills? If nothing comes out of the barrel, the tip of that gun, because it's a prop gun, not a real gun, there's no need to chase Mr. Efron. There's no need for him to move, period. The gun would make the sound. They're telling you that's what the deterrent is. So why does he move? He moves because it's a real gun, because things do come out of the end of that. And he's trying to get a line of sight on Mr. Efron. Consider it from Mr. Efron's perspective. They want you to believe at the first scene, Mr. Efron looked coolly at the defendant when he pulled that gun out and said, put that fake-ass gun away. So when he pulls it out a second time, a few minutes later, does Mr. Efron look back at him and say, do I have to tell you again? Put that fake-ass gun away again. No. Clearly, that's not what he's doing. What he's doing is reacting to, oh my God, someone just pulled a real gun on him. And he's jumping around Ills, trying to put something in between him and the defendant. They're very close. He believes that's a real gun. He knows. His reactions are, that's a real gun. 12E. Let's talk about 12E's perspective. He says, when he testifies, I knew that that was a fake gun. That's, going back, I already knew that before the defendant pulled it out. But what does he do on the video? What does the video show? He's behind a wall. So he's the guy to come in here and tell you, we all knew it was a fake gun. When you see him, when you see his reaction, where is he? He's on the other side of the street, he's hiding. Why does he have to hide if nothing comes out of that gun? He's hiding because he knows, what we all know, it's a real gun. The third problem that video creates for the defense, it negates this whole idea of defense of others, that the defendant had to do this in order to protect Ills. The defense of others instruction will tell you that it really only applies if the defendant used no more force than was reasonably necessary in the circumstances. The defense in this case needs you to believe that Mr. Efron was not just beating up Ills, but that he was savagely pummeling Ills.
I mean, it kind of looks like it.
Before he's confronted, says Mr. Efron was throwing haymakers at Ills, mercilessly, savagely punching Ills. Why is Mr. Efron doing this? That's never explained. 12E has no explanation for that. In his opening statement, Mr. Tacopina told you that Ills' face was pummeled and that they were going to bring in pictures to show you just how damaged Ills was. Well, obviously that did not pan out. And obviously 12E was not expecting to be confronted with pictures or videos of Ills' face the day after this happened, showing not a single scratch on his face. Nothing. If what 12E was describing to you had actually happened, these savage blows landed on Ills' face, if that had actually happened, they would have brought in photos of Ills' bloody, bruised face, black eyes, busted lip, whatever it was, cut on his cheek. They didn't bring in any of that because it didn't happen. One step further, we actually brought in pictures of him to show there's nothing there. It absolutely did not happen. Okay. Before I go on, I want to address another thing that I'm sure Mr. Tacopina is going to talk about when he stands up here, and that is the injury to Mr. Efron. And some of you may have the attitude as you sit here, you know what? He wasn't really hurt that bad. Mr. Tacopina will, I can almost guarantee he's going to call it a finger scrape. And then you have on top of that, you have Lou blurting out that the defendant's going to go to prison for this long period of time. There's a reason why the judge sustained that, told you not to consider that. But it's interesting that Lou blurts that out when he's not asked a question about that. That's evidence, clear evidence of Lou just trying to get out information to you that he thinks is prejudicial to the people, to our case. I hope you understand that even though this one incident did not result in a serious injury, this is still a serious crime. That the potential for real serious harm was absolutely there that night. This was 10 o'clock p.m. on a Saturday night, a busy Saturday in a busy area of Hollywood. And your common sense tells you how bullets travel when they're fired. They don't always hit their intended target. And the potential for someone else to have been seriously hurt, in this case, is absolutely present. You had busy nightclubs, people getting out of nightclubs, cars, the whole parking lot full of cars. The potential that someone else could have been hit was there, it was real, and it's serious. And you know that when guns are discharged in busy areas, people die. We are lucky that's not this case. But it's still an unimportant case. And I'm going to continue to point out how absurd some of the defense arguments are. And I will fully acknowledge to you that my tone can be sarcastic. Please don't take my sarcasm as any indication that this is unserious. There are definitely laws that you can argue with and say, I don't really know if this should be on the books. This is not one of them. Firing a gun off in Hollywood on a busy Saturday night is not one of them. And even if that's your perspective, you need to set that aside. That's not your role as a juror. The judge tells you what the law is. Your job is just to apply the facts to the law and make a decision. The only decision you have to make is, was it a real gun or a fake gun? Now, to that end, talking about Mr. Efron's injuries, you'll be able to read the jury instructions for yourself, but there's a whole host of things that we do not have to prove in this case. The law tells you we do not have to prove. That the defendant even touched Mr. Efron. Mr. Efron doesn't have to be injured in any way. The defendant does not even have to fire his gun for this crime to be completed. He doesn't even have to point it directly at Mr. Efron. The moment the defendant pulled that gun out, armed himself, and was capable of inflicting injury on Mr. Efron, that crime was completed at that moment. Again, you'll see in the instruction, I put the number of the instruction at the bottom for you so you can go back and read it yourself. The gun does not have to be pointed directly at Mr. Efron. There can be steps that the defendant still has to take before he inflicts injury. It does not even need to be fired. The evidence in this case compels you to one conclusion to that question I've posed to you multiple times now. Was it a real gun or a fake gun? And that is really that the defendant was in possession of a real gun. Mr. Efron recovered real ammunition from the scene, from a real gun that fired. Everyone in the surveillance videos that I've played for you now, that I've slowed down for you, is responding like it's a real gun. When the defendant's house is searched by LAPD, they only find real guns and real ammunition. The defense theory in this case that this was a prop gun, there is absolutely no evidence to support that idea. The only thing that supports that is Twelby and Liu, who are telling you that it's a prop gun. Once you decide that it's a real gun, you're deciding that those two witnesses especially lie. Everything that they say should be rejected. And why do they lie to you? Because they know the truth. They know this was a real gun. So you can decide this case by finding they lied to you. You can decide this case by just watching the videos for yourself. You can decide this case by listening to Mr. Efron's testimony. Every time he's talked about this crime, he has always maintained this was a real gun. And if you determine that the gun used in this case was a real gun, the law compels you to one conclusion: that the defendant is guilty. That's it. Not because you want to find him guilty, not because you're going to find pleasure in finding him guilty, but because the law compels you that once you make that determination, that's the only just outcome in this case. I know Mr. Takakina is going to talk about Mr. Efron, and he's going to talk about all of Mr. Efron's statements. He's going to point out every single minor inconsistency that Mr. Efron has ever made when he has given statements. He's going to bring up points in time that Mr. Efron is talking about things that have absolutely nothing to do with this case. You saw that clearly when the defense put up Wally Sajemi and tried to play snippets of Mr. Sajemi's recordings of Mr. Efron. They tried to put up clips where Mr. Efron said to Mr. Sajemi, "I'm already a millionaire." Oh, look, see, he said he was already a millionaire, but he's not. Where he said to Mr. Sajemi, "Go ahead and post news articles on social media." He said he was, I'm suing Rocky. I don't care about the police. I don't care what happens to the criminal case. I'm getting 30 M's. If I disappear, this case will be harder for the prosecutors. All those clips, none of those clips helped you answer the question in this case: was it a real gun or a fake gun? And who cares? Who cares if Mr. Efron said in the past he was a millionaire when he wasn't? Who cares if he asked someone to post a news article on social media? Mr. Efron wants to be paid because he was the victim of a real crime by a real gun. And some of the most important evidence that you heard in this case actually came from those recordings. Those recordings are very important because Mr. Efron does not know he's being recorded. He thinks he's talking to his friend. He has no idea that this person is betraying him, recording him, and then immediately turning their conversations over to the defendant.
So are we just gonna ignore the fact that Relly lied about those conversations being real? What are we doing?
Are his unfiltered, unprepared thoughts. He's not talking to the police. He does not even know he's being recorded. But what he says to Wally in those recordings is exactly what he told you here in court. I want to go through them because these recordings are important. So I'm going to break them down. We're going to play a couple of them.
Take sides. I'm mad at both y'all niggas for letting that shit happen, you feel me?
Oh, it ain't no picking sides. That nigga 100% crazy and wrong.
Yeah.
100% wrong. And he got 12-year ills mixed around. I'm not. You gotta understand, Raggy been on his high horse for a very long time. You feel me? He didn't have to do what he did. He forced my hand. You feel me? I got over 20 missed calls between him deals. Why is Rocky going out his way to do anything like that? You get what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure he didn't get a story or whatever it is. But you gotta look at it like this. Why is he going out his way to call me 20 times? I had those 12 with him. Text messages saying link up, where you at? And all of this is because of I pressed him about Josh, him not doing right by Josh, and he spoke to Josh's mom and lied. You get what I'm saying? So I wrote him about that. He hits up Bari later about that, but I'm with Bari. Bari got the phone on speaker. You get what I'm saying? This shit didn't fit well with me. So Rocky talks about me within that conversation because he sees I text him about Josh. You feel me? Told him I'm taking ASAP out my name. This was 7 months ago. I took ASAP out my name. You feel me?
Yeah.
He's a bitch, so he goes ahead and hit Bari because Bari influenced him a whole week later doing that complex con shit. You feel what I'm saying? Just so happened I'm with Bari while Rocky hits him. Rocky says my name. You get what I'm saying? Real money bitch ass, tell him I don't fuck with him, whoop-de-woo. You feel me? No fighting words, none of that. Just basically, nigga, I heard you. But in Rocky's head, he looked like a bitch because Barry had him on speaker. Rocky don't know who else heard that conversation, but he know I heard him talk about me, and I told Rocky over the years, nigga, if you have a problem with me, let me know. Stop rocking me to sleep. You feel me? Boom. Next thing you know, I guess that was enough for him. He felt like a bitch because he knew I heard that conversation. I wasn't supposed to hear that conversation because Rocky never, I never heard him say curse words or even have that type of energy towards me. You know what I'm saying? So now I know the real him. I tell real money. Tell that nigga fuck him. You feel me? Boom. Shit gets related to him. Next thing you know, I get over 20, 30 missed calls between him, Ills, and Rocky. Text messages. I'm staying at the Lowe's. I tell him, he calls me. I finally answer because I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
I answered him. He's like, where you at? With his slim voice. I'm like, huh? Where you at? Nigga, I'm at the W. I'm not really at the Lowe's. You feel me? You know, Hollywood Boulevard. They all look the same. He's like, no, you're not. Nigga, that's a bum-ass hotel. I'm like, huh? He said, show me outside. Okay. All of it look the same. I showed him outside. What he does, be there in 5 minutes. I'm like, alright. My girl like, what the fuck is going on? I'm like, I don't know. He calls me, Ills calls me. I got all these text messages, bro. These niggas is dumb. You and a couple only people heard this story. Rocky out here thinking it's all sweet, but his life is really, and bro,
that's what I wanted to ask you, bro. Like, why the boys though? You feel me? Why take it to you know the guys? You feel me?
Who, me?
Yeah, think though how the boys meet.
Why wouldn't I, bro? He's a multi-millionaire. He blamed at me. I'm no longer on his level. Everybody turned on me. Everybody,
bro.
Rocky had everybody turn on me that day. Plus, what the fuck am I doing? Spin on his block and go shoot him up?
In that couple minutes, he tells the exact same details that he told you when he testified in this case. That's evidence they created. That's their person trying to trick Mr. Efron, trying to get Mr. Efron to say something damaging, say something that's going to undermine his case. Because while he knows he's recording these conversations for one purpose, so that he can turn them right over to the defendant. But what is Terrell saying? Everything consistent with what he told you. How
Straight
this
trash, hot
interaction
garbage.
started. Even that he blamed at him, that he shot at him.
The same thing, because he waved at me 4 or 5 times. I had to use Ills as a shield while I be dead.
I feel niggas ain't trying to like, you feel me? Not trying to end squash this shit, get some paper or something or what, you know, like.
Bro, it's too late. He told me to suck a dick. Boom. I hit up John the same day. Bro, that's all on him. He had nothing but time. Bro, went ahead, I got the best lawyer in LA and went about my business. You feel me? He told John to stop contacting me. I sent him the pictures of the bullets, sent him the text messages of him, letting him know how serious this is. You know what he said? Nigga, fuck you.
Dang.
So what I'm supposed to do? Accept the nigga shooting at me 4 or 5 times where I almost died, or sue this man? Now coming with suing, of course, the severity of the case, he's trying to kill me. So that's what he gotta read. You feel me?
There ain't no way niggas could squat, like, you feel me? No paper, no nothing, Rose, like, you feel me? Like,
bro, he's he's 33 years old. He got other men talking for him. He know what he did. You get what I'm saying? He had more than enough time. This shit happened 7 months later. He wasn't trying to reach out to me. He still didn't reach out to me.
with the legal shit involving out the boys, you know, so.
That's on him. I didn't want to go about that. I went ahead and got a lawyer. When you get a lawyer, that has nothing to do with boys. And Jabari, his friend, he might as well thank him for him not being late in the field, because those allegations, you feel me? He got enough, and you're part of the PR team. He would have had enough people to block that if Jabari didn't say nothing, bro. Those was allegations. Jabari made it official.
Again, he's entirely consistent. The defendant shot at me 4 or 5 times. The same thing he walks into the police station and
This
tells
is not
the police.
consistent.
He's entirely consistent about what happens after the shooting. That he reached out to the defendant, that he sent him text messages, pictures of the fired cartridge cases, that he reached out to the defendant's manager. All that consistent with what you saw in the text messages and everything else that came in. Even how he was outed as the victim in this case, that Jabari made it official. That Jabari was the one who said that he had snitched and attached his name to it. That's their evidence that they created. And it's entirely consistent with what he told you when he testified.
No, it's not.
I just want that nigga to kind of end this shit.
No, it's not.
And you know, and he ended it when he shot at him. Who ends anything when a
It's
nigga
not
shoot at you
consistent.
4 or 5 times? You gotta grab another member to protect yourself. He called me out my living space. Called me, told me to stop ducking him. He claimed that. That's called premeditated, bro. You feel what I'm saying? He didn't give me a chance. He didn't tell me I'm gonna come to a gun battle. I came to link him to see what the fuck the status was about. He pulls out. He tries to chest bump me. He tries to chest bump shoot me. He didn't give me no seconds, bro. This shit happened like that. And I got it all on camera. You don't want that, like, trust me. He's stupid. He did it all on camera, champ.
Again, consistent. I didn't know I was walking into a gun battle. I didn't bring a weapon. What does he do to me, though? He tries to chest bump me, and then he shoots at me.
Wow.
So it's really to get in the room, or you just trying to move on and shit?
Besides suing somebody like that. You feel me? Now he gotta face the consequences of with that because he wanted to be a gangster and run out his crib like that. That has nothing to do with me. You feel me? I did my part. If you look at it on my end, what else am I supposed to do?
Why not just ask for the bag, or you know?
I tried already, bro, and you don't ask for the bag because that's extortion, bro. When you got somebody that's shooting at you, you ever look like, I'm smart, bro. You gotta understand, I'm not no dumb black nigga, bro. You know what I'm saying? You ask for a bag without a lawyer, bro, it's called extortion. You feel me? You're gonna do everything accordingly. Everything accordingly, or it's gonna catch up with you.
What's Mr. Sajemi trying to do? He's trying to bait Mr. Efron into giving some kind of inconsistent answer, but Mr. Efron's consistent the whole time.
The lawyers,
He said he's baiting him into giving an answer by saying, I feel you. Come on, man. Yeah, I feel you.
I went to the lawyers.
All right, we're nitpicking at this point. I'll let him go.
Gave the police the evidence, but you can't sue somebody with circumstances like that without criminal actions because it's such a heinous crime.
I feel you.
When you purposely know what you're doing,
Man.
that's a whole different ballgame. You get what I'm saying? And I'm still feel sympathetic for this man because I know that. I know what he's about to endure. But he told me, fuck off, go to the police. He told me this type of shit.
You're hearing his unvarnished, his unprepared thoughts. He's telling you, even as this happens, he still feels bad for the defendant. Still knows he's about to go through stuff, but the defendant gave him no other option. Told him to go to the police.
I'm not the toughest nigga in the world. I don't know too many gangster niggas that's gonna come at Rocky. He's a millionaire, bro. That shit can come from anywhere. He decided to fire on me.
And that's why, right? Because it was the defendant's decision.
Like, who gets cool after somebody firing on you 5 times, bro? Nobody.
Bro, I could probably talk to him and shit and figure out, you know, like some.
I don't even want no message relayed like that because he had more than, bro. I had over a year to reach out to me, bro. I'm not the hardest person to reach. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He chose to do that. Like, and you seen what I just sent you the other day, how he reacted off of me hitting up John to try to figure out what we're gonna do here before I even hit up a lawyer or anything. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, he don't want to hear nothing from nobody,
Yeah,
bro.
I feel
Until like some people is like that. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, until the shit.
And then I don't want to jeopardize what you have going on. Him thinking that you spoke to me. Like, don't even put yourself involved in this shit, bro. Trust.
Yeah, man.
Rocky would start looking at you funny, and I don't need you feeling like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It just trickled down to everyone, you feel me? Like, even if you
It
don't,
do.
you feel me? Like,
That's gonna fuck up everybody's career who worked for him.
You feel me? So,
Everybody who worked for him, but he did that because he's stingy, bro. I can't not do what I'm doing and think about everybody else. You know what I'm saying? Because I gotta worry about myself and worry about what the fuck happens to me. He wasn't thinking about nobody. Everybody's thinking like that, but then when it comes out, niggas are gonna really start hating him because, bro, why would you do that? Why would you put yourself out there to do something like that where it's unforgivable, bro? You get what I'm saying?
yeah.
Like, this ain't something like it was a fight, you punch me, I can sue you, you don't go to jail, bro, you fired on me.
Those recordings are important because the defense created them. Because Mr. Sajemi knew he was going to send those immediately to the defendant. And he recorded 2 separate phone calls on 2 separate dates. Said he sent them to the defendant. But Mr. Sajemi, although he tried to catch Mr. Efron saying something inconsistent, catch him in a lie, didn't work. When it comes to asking Wally, well, hey, what did you say? What did the defendant say to you about this? All of a sudden, he can't remember. Didn't record those calls. He's the mediator, right? But he doesn't remember a single thing the defendant said to him about this. Definitely doesn't remember the defendant saying to him, what are you talking about? This was a fake gun. He hears over and over and over from Mr. Efron that the defendant fired a real gun at him.
Y'all think
4 or
Relly was
5
tripping?
times.
Possible.
So he's trying to catch Mr. Efron in a lie, but what does he catch him saying? I'm with Jabari and Rocky talks bad about me. I tell Rocky I don't want to have anything to do with him. He calls me while I'm sleeping in my hotel room.
What about the
He
text
provoked a
messages?
meeting with me. He and Ills called me 20 times. He told me he's going to come meet me at the W, and he fired at me 4 or 5 times. I had to use Ills as a human shield, or I'll be dead. He's unequivocal. This was a real gun. He tried to kill me. And after that, everybody turned on me. It's too late for Rocky to pay me and make this go away. I tried to resolve this quickly. I tried to reach out to Rocky. I tried to reach out to John, his manager. He left me no options. He told me go to the police. So I got a lawyer, and that's what I did. Maybe we still could have kept this quiet, but then Jabari posts that post about me and outs me to the world as a snitch. Those recordings, I want to say they're about 25 minutes. You listen to the whole thing, those are just snippets. Tried to give you a reasonable sample from them. But you listen to the whole thing, what will you not hear Mr. Efron say? I'm faking the whole thing. Rocky really fired a fake gun at me. You know, right? We all know. Rocky carries that fake gun. That's what he knew. I was never in any real danger. None of that comes out of Mr. Efron. He's unequivocal. He tried to kill me. That's the entire case. Mr. Efron told the police what happened. He was consistent about the details of the shooting. Since the very beginning of this case, he's been consistent. He was consistent when he knew he was being recorded. He certainly knew the police were going to write reports. He probably had some idea that the police were video or audio recording him. More importantly, he was consistent even when he didn't know he was being recorded. When he thought he was in a safe space, when he thought he was talking to his friend, he's still consistent. He has told the details of what happened that night no less than 9 times. Okay? And he was on the witness stand for 5 days when he testified. He has had to repeat this over and over and over. Can you imagine telling the details of something that happened to you 9 times and not having minor inconsistencies in what you say? I mean, it's completely natural. But he, Mr. Efron, was locked into his statement on November 8th, 2021. You could even argue that he was locked in on November 6th, the day of the shooting, because he started sending text messages to the defendant.
Yeah, those are Rocky and Rihanna's kids in the courtroom.
2 Ills, 2 John. He's locked in with all of them, telling them this was a real gun, sending them pictures of the cartridge cases. Focusing though on that important question of was this a real gun or a prop gun, when is the first time that's raised, that this is a prop gun? You heard in the testimony from ASAP Twelvey and ASAP Lou that the first time this comes up, I guess, is August of 2024, and they are only going to tell the defense attorney. So they held that all-important information for over 2 years, almost 3 years, before then they're going to tell the details to the defense attorneys only. You found out that it was only turned over to us the day before jury selection started in this case. And then you found out that Lou's statement was actually changed about, oh, where the gun is now. That was changed the day that he came in to testify. That timing alone defies credibility.
Objection, Your Honor, that misstates the evidence. Over.
Oh, we got our first objection. Okay.
The idea that they would not be running into the police station to tell their story is absurd. So let's focus on their stories. ASAP Lou, I've already talked to you about how he's conflicted in this case, how he relies on the defendant for his financial, livelihood.
That's not true.
You should view his testimony as being very convenient. His story changes, and he has a perfect explanation for everything.
We're talking about the consistency of testimonies now.
He came in, he told you a story to explain away the evidence that would obviously point to the defendant's guilt. The primary piece of evidence that he needs to explain away, that Lou needs to explain to you so that you no longer see the defendant is guilty, was why was the defendant carrying a fake gun? Lou's going to answer that for you. And why did the defendant have a magazine for a Glock 43, which just so happens to be the same type of gun that's consistent with the gun that fired those 2 cartridge cases that Mr. Efron located? Why does he just so happen to have that same magazine in his bedroom closet, defendant's bedroom closet? So how does he answer the question of why the defendant was carrying a fake gun? Again, we went through the whole thing of extreme violence that the defendant's facing, and their only reasonable response to that is to carry a fake gun. We've already talked about how that defies any logic. Keep in mind, though, that apparently, even though that was Lou's advice, the defendant doesn't follow that advice completely, because he literally sleeps next to a 44 Magnum Desert Eagle, a real gun, which is in reach of his bed. Not much further away, he has a rifle and a shotgun. What he did not have anywhere in his house was a prop gun or any prop ammunition. Obviously,
About to take a break.
if you were the victim of a violent crime, the response to arm yourself with a real gun is preferable to this whole prop gun thing. Clearly, that's something the defendant also agrees with. Lou was very clear that the fake gun that he alleges that the defendant had, which he said he personally modified, was modeled after a semi-automatic pistol. That's Lou's testimony. And here's where it becomes painfully obvious that Lou did not fully think this through. He didn't fully flush out the story before he came in to tell you. He had to tell you that he modified the gun by adding that belt clip and by putting that magazine extender on so that he could explain why that gun had those small things that Twelby could just so conveniently come in here and tell you that in the heat of the moment, when it's quickly pulled, he saw those two same features, that tiny piece of metal on the side that would hold it to your belt and the magazine extender, so that their stories match, their stories line up. If you accept that the defendant had a fake gun that Lou just described, you would also have to explain why there are no fired fake prop cartridges at the crime scene.
There we go.
Because the
I
gun
knew they were gonna mention that.
Lou described, this prop gun that existed, that's a semi-automatic prop gun, would operate just like a real semi-automatic pistol.
There it goes.
And it would shoot those cartridge cases out the side just like a real gun would. So why are there no prop cartridge cases found at the scene? In his opening statement, Mr. Tacopina made a big show of pointing out how 7 or 8 LAPD patrol officers scoured every inch of that street of Vista Del Mar. They walked up and down with searchlights.
It's a fair point.
They didn't find anything. They definitely did not find any prop-fired ammunition. Now, he obviously did that to argue to you that Mr. Efron planted those cartridge cases. That he actually discovered them at the scene after the police had searched it. So there's no cartridge cases, he comes back and he plants them. But he forgot that if the police are as thorough as he's saying, that they also would have found the ammunition from the defendant's gun. That painfully contradicts their own defense in this case.